8 of the decision, and it has to be submitted in writing to our planning consultant, which is PCPS. And if any of you guys aren't within that 60 meters and would like appeal information after the fact, you can always call me or email me and I'll provide that to you. There is a $250 appeal fee as well associated with that. If you are successful in the appeal, you receive $200 back. So it would just be a $50 administration fee. So hopefully that's clarifying for anyone, but if not, please feel free to reach out to me later this week and I can discuss further.
Thank you for that. I know we were a little bit out of order here, but I will call our meeting to order now. And at 5:03. And any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Yes, Member Ross.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. I'll just make the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Thank you. And then we'll move on to the adoption of our minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on October 2nd. Hopefully you've had a chance to read those. Thank you, Member Kentz.
I make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. Any discussion regarding that? No? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our one application here this evening. Development permit for a garden suite with variances at 47 Pickwick Lane. Development Officer Dooley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as you mentioned, this is item 4.1, which is proposing a garden suite with a variance at 47 Pickwick Lane. Garden suite in the land use bylaw is a separate, subordinate, and self-contained dwelling unit with a cooking facility located on a residential parcel within an accessory residential building. This includes a tiny cottage house. It is zoned residential detached district, or R1, that the subject property is located on. The R1 district provides an area for residential development in the form of detached dwellings and compatible uses. The Municipal Development Plan, RES 5.1, Housing Diversity, does state that the city is striving to deliver a housing mix across the community of 65% single detached dwellings and 35% multifamily residential, as identified in the Housing Needs Assessment of 2013. The Commission's decision today is for a discretionary use development permit with a 4% variance from the maximum allowable square footage from 70 square meters to 73 square meters. And just to talk a little bit about this site plan, the proposed garden suite is located on the bottom of the site plan there. And that red X is just through a revision that the applicant decided to make after hearing some of the comments from the circulation, which is to no longer propose the second residential accessory building, which was just a detached garage. Through the neighboring consultation, 21 property owners were notified within a 60-meter radius from the subject property. In response, 28 letters of opposition were received at the time of the writing of the report, and 11 additional letters were received in opposition prior to the MPC meeting. So to summarize some of the feedback, one of the opposition comments was that the proposed garden suite will not be subordinate to the principal dwelling. The garden suite does meet the requirements of the land use bylaw, including parcel coverage being lesser in height and being lesser in square footage than the principal dwelling. A small variance due to an uncovered deck is being requested, which is the 3 square meters. The proposed garden suite will be used in the future as an Airbnb or for commercial purposes. Now, planning and development does not regulate rental properties. However, if the applicant pursues a short-term rental, which would be like an Airbnb or a Verbo, a separate permit for a bed and breakfast will be required. A bed and breakfast is a discretionary use as well within the R1 district. Therefore, neighboring landowners within 60 meters would be notified of that proposal if it did come forward. The current landowners on Pickwick Lane have chosen not to build fences side or rear, and this development would drastically alter the aesthetic of the area. Fencing is generally considered a civil matter and is regulated under the Fence Line Act. Upon a site inspection, this would be the first suite on the block and one of the only accessory residential buildings of its size within the laneway. There are other accessory residential buildings in the neighborhood that are of a similar size. The proposed development will negatively impact property values, and this is something that planning and development can't comment on. English Estates is a single family area. The surrounding area of the subject parcel is designated R1 Residential Detached District in the land use bylaw. Garden suites are discretionary use in the R1 district, which is considered a lower density residential district. Another concern was that space in the alley is limited, which will make accessing the suite and garage difficult. The lane is approximately 6 meters in width, which is the required width for lanes within the city of Lacombe. The proposal will deteriorate English Estates and the property will become 2 rental houses. And again, rental properties are not regulated by the land use bylaw unless it's being used as a bed and breakfast. There were concerns over loss of green space, traffic, parking, and construction noise. Any construction will be required to adhere to the city's noise bylaw, and traffic will be required to adhere to the Traffic Act. The loss of green space is on private property, which is not communal green space. The accessory building / garden suite's height will have an imposing impact on adjacent properties. The proposed garden suite does meet the applicable height requirements of the land use bylaw. However, administration does note that the adjacent principal dwellings are single story. The proposed accessory building is no longer being applied for by the applicant, as mentioned when we looked at the site plan. There was a concern about negative impact on drainage, and the individual who first wrote in about the drainage concerns is immediately adjacent to this property. He did submit a second letter that was provided in the separate package of concerns about snow control as well in terms of the drainage. So upon completion of a record search, no complaints regarding drainage are on file for this area. However, if approved, administration would like to put forward a recommendation to include a condition for provision of a lot grading plan to ensure that the proposed building would not impact drainage on adjacent properties. The buildings will be constructed over utility right-of-way was another concern. There is no utility right-of-way located on the parcel in proximity to the proposed garden suite. Another concern was that if this is allowed for one property, it will be allowed for all. Any future proposals would be required to go through the same process, and the land use bylaw does currently limit the number of suites on a block to 12%. On this block, 12% would be 2 suites, so 1 additional suite on this block. Another concern was that the architectural controls for the area were put in place to provide for single-family dwellings, clean, comfortable yards, and enough space to build a back garage with a 15-foot height maximum. The architectural guidelines were created and implemented by a private agency at the time the lots were being marketed and sold. The city only has authority to regulate city-approved plans, including the land use bylaw and municipal development plan. And again, after this concern was raised, the applicant did actually pull title for his property. No architectural controls or restrictive covenants are registered on his title at this time. The proposal will take away from the privacy and enjoyment of the lot. The proposed garden suite meets the required setbacks for accessory residential buildings. The lots in English Estates were not meant to become multifamily rentals, and the R1 district does allow for garden suites as a discretionary use. To continue the neighboring consultation, the application was circulated in accordance with the city's land use bylaw section 4.6.3a, which states, where a development consists of an application subject to the approval of the Municipal Planning Commission or City Council, the development officer shall notify landowners within 60 meters of the subject property of an application for development, indicating the location and nature of the proposed development and request comments on the proposed development. The application was circulated to 21 adjacent landowners for comments. Out of the comments received, 15 came from within the circulation area and 24 responses came from outside of the circulation area. Out of the 39 total responses received, 14 letters came from the same household, meaning that both individuals that lived there submitted a separate letter of opposition. So the same household would have provided 2 letters of opposition. And the map on the side here just shows the circulation area that works out to 60 meters. So under the land use bylaw, section 3.3.3 states which applications MPC is authorized to consider and decide upon, which includes variances greater than 15%, discretionary uses, which is why this application is in front of you today, and any other applications the development officer refers to the commission. Section 4.8.7, MPC may grant a variance from the requirements of the bylaw if they're satisfied that the variance will not result in a development that does not comply with the requirements of the Municipal Government Act, Subdivision and Development Regulations, Safety Code Act, and any other applicable statutory plans or outline of plans adopted by council. Typically, the development officer does have the authority to make a decision on variances of 15% or less. So the 4% variance being requested, that's not why it's in front of you. It's because a garden suite is a discretionary use. So section 4.7.3, the development authority may approve an application for a development permit or subdivision, even though the proposed development does not comply with the land use bylaw or is a non-conforming building, if in the opinion of the development authority, the proposed development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood, would not materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels, and conforms to the use prescribed for the subject parcel in this bylaw. For the analysis, the proposed garden suite is a 2-story, 3-bedroom dwelling unit. It meets the majority of the requirements of the land use bylaw, including the maximum height, parcel coverage, setbacks, and parking. However, it will require a 4% variance to the maximum allowable square footage from the maximum of 70 meters squared to 73 meters squared to accommodate a proposed deck on the suite. The garden suite is approximately 54% of the principal dwelling square footage, which is below the maximum allowed, which is 60% under the land use bylaw. The proposed suite will be 25 feet in height, which meets the requirements of being 0.5 meters or 1.64 feet lesser in height than the principal dwelling, which is 27 feet in height. The 2 immediately adjacent properties contain single-story or bungalow-style homes. To protect privacy, the proposed windows on the garden suite are located predominantly facing the front and rear of the property, and the proposed exterior finish is similar in appearance to the principal dwelling. The garden suite is required to have 2 parking stalls. However, the applicant is proposing to provide 3 on-site parking stalls at the rear. Since the proposed revised plans, the applicant has indicated that a parking pad will be provided in lieu of the previously proposed detached garage. The principal dwelling has an attached 2-car garage as well. Access to the garden suite will be from the alley, which is gravel. Surrounding parcels are zoned detached residential R1 district, and the garden suite will be the first located on the block. During the circulation period, the application received significant public input. Planning and Development has provided responses above to the received feedback and included the letters at the end of the report. There are several detached garages located within the rear yard in English Estates. The detached garages are all single-story and vary in size, ranging from single to double detached garage, which there's some pictures below. There is an existing 2-story garden suite located in near proximity to the proposed garden suite on the subject parcel, which is also pictured on this slide. The applicant supplied additional information after the writing of the report, being the current land title for the property, no restrictive covenants or architectural controls are registered on title at the time to limit development. The proposal meets the intent of the land use bylaw. However, it is a listed discretionary use, which means approval is at the discretion of the development authority. Based on the comments received during the circulation, adjacent landowners do believe that the proposed development will interfere with the enjoyment of their neighborhood. The Municipal Planning Commission has 3 options when considering this application. So MPC may either approve the application subject to the conditions listed in the report. And again, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, if it is approved, adding that condition about the lot grading plan would be administration's recommendation. The second option is to defer the application subject to receipt of additional information, or refuse the application for the following reasons, being the proposed development unduly interferes with the amenities of the neighborhood and enjoyment of adjacent parcels, the proposed development is an overdevelopment of the site, and the proposed development is uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. Thank you, and the applicant is here this evening as well.
Thank you very much, Development Officer Dooley. I appreciate that. I also appreciate all of the letters and comments that were sent in. I do appreciate all the work that you went to for this. Certainly reading them, a lot of them have the same concerns. And certainly I have some concerns that are very similar to that. I do have, like our land use bylaw allows this type of development. I have a hard time going against that bylaw, and I have voted previously to in areas where we've had where the buildings were much higher and so on against this type of development. But I also have voted for it in other areas. I don't think in this case this is a unique situation in that sense that, you know, as the English Estates, there is an existing one already within your community. So it's going to be very hard for me to vote against this because of the fact that it is approved under our land use bylaw. So at this time, I will open it up to our members here for the discussion. Member Ross.
Thank you, Chair Gullickson. Previously was any new subdivision, and there was obviously architectural controls, but I can remember when this is being built. I've honestly been around long enough. But in 7 years in council and everything being brought forward to council, I haven't been involved in something that is changing a whole subdivision. And even though it's within the bylaws, this is quite a precedent that is of change. Yes, from when I was previously in Henry's, I've always had architecture controls, but then now I hear that really the developer should be consulting with planning development, or historically it sounds like has not. And it's to be aware of the bylaws, the development, planning and development bylaws and the ones in place. And yet this was, gosh, this is probably over 40 years ago. This one started being the old local nurseries, I can remember, but it's kind of frustrating how architectural controls aren't carrying forward. And we have the nature of this, you're getting a large lot. People have RVs, bigger garages. But this is really, in my mind, this is basically a complete split of this specific lot. Like there's a lot of houses that aren't this big across the whole city on a specific lot. Like if for family reasons or rental, buy a duplex, rent out the other side, or buy a bungalow duplex. There's some absolutely beautiful ones. Have one for your family member and one for yourself. I don't know. It's really tough when you put bylaws in for reasons for consistency, but boy, and as we've discussed in council, there are even responsibilities. If we go to AUMA and FCM, municipal councils have a responsibility to be flexible and discretionary uses to try to create more housing as the national housing crisis. I honestly, the most difficult thing being on council for the last 7 years is dealing with these bigger lots, especially downtown and the change of it, or, for example, across from Popo's Park where the church was. And that is the most difficult thing that you consider, because you have a lot of people that have the true heart and pride. Why they bought in a bigger area is for the bigger lots. And it's very rare to have this community in the way it was developed. Gosh, I'm thinking it's got to be 40 years ago or more. But so we are here to have that discussion. And yes, we can go against the bylaws, and that's our job here tonight. But I don't support this and yet your decision is affecting people's lives. It's not us to tell the developer or the owner what to do with their property. And that's the other difficult part is, bylaws are for consistency, but yet you're setting a huge precedent with what bylaws we have. So.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Anyone else want to speak? No? I would just add to my statements earlier that I think the building is too large. I have no doubt about that. I just have a difficult time going against the bylaws that council have set, and I've been using that as my gauge for all of my decisions. So that's where my consistency comes in. And as these members know, we don't always agree on everything. So, and that's why we're here. And I look forward to somebody making a motion if there's no further discussion. If nobody else wants to step up.
Oh,
well. Member Ross?
You can, this is Ms. Dooley, the recommendation of objection would be C, correct? I would make that motion that Municipal Planning Commission declines the application under C, refuse the application for the following reasons. A, the proposed development unduly interferes with the amenities of the neighborhood and enjoyment of the adjacent parcels. Sub B, I guess I may say, the proposed development is an overdevelopment of the site. And sub C being the proposed development is uncharacteristic of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Member Ross. Any discussion on that? Yes. Development Officer Dooley.
Sorry to the chair and to Councillor Ross. I just want to make sure, because Manager Hackett does have the procedural bylaw here. I want to make sure we don't have to frame it as a positive recommendation, that we're okay to recommend that it's refused. I'm not entirely certain.
I would be absolutely open to direction, but that was what was, I asked for advice based upon declining it. I was advised that was C. So if you can recommend me further for your, so it's done procedurally, yes. I gratefully appreciate that.
Through to Chair Gullickson. Typically, it's difficult to vote on a negative motion, which is where Senior Development Officer Dooley is coming from. But in the case of MPC, to be very clear to the folks in the gallery and to the applicant of what the decision of MPC is, in this case, the recommended C as read in by Member Ross. There's no change, no recommended changes to that.
Oh. Thank you very much, Manager Hackett. I appreciate that. So the motion stands as read. Any further comments? Yes.
Through the chair.
Member Conti.
I have a little bit of trouble saying that the development interferes with the amenities of the neighborhood and enjoyment, and that it's overdeveloped. It fits every guideline it is. The only thing I'm struggling with is the uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. The other two ones, we have to, as this group, consider the bylaw of the city that wants more development. It fits in the development as R1s. We have passed others similar to this in other areas with the same kind of opposition from other neighbors as well. So we need to think about that as well, and not just have this one as a separate thing because there's so much opposition, but to be consistent throughout. So that's what I feel on that matter.
Thank you very much. Member Ross?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gullickson. To Planning Development, Ms. Dooley or Ms. Hackett. Under the downtown restructuring and the DARP, that is obviously different zoning where I was on affordable housing in the previous term. There was the tiny house scenario that was brought forward, but this is not that same theory in this subdivision as it is potentially zoned downtown, with the downtown bigger lots being to promote walking distances within the amenities right close to downtown. Is that correct? That's totally, I think I can remember historically in affordable housing and the other direction of downtown Lacombe. So this is, so like in that discussion you were saying, I still firmly believe this is like a lot split. Like this is not just a, bed and breakfast in my opinion.
Through the chair to Councillor Ross. So the land use bylaw doesn't have a definition for a tiny house or anything like that. In terms of the DARP, correct, that does not apply in this circumstance. So there are some different considerations since it's not in that overlay, if that's what you were getting at. And then in terms of the lot splitting, if approved and if that were to be the case, the applicant would have to apply for a subdivision, which more than likely would have some bigger concerns considering the access and the servicing and those kinds of things.
If I may continue?
Certainly.
Like really the square footage of these lots is really the conventional 50 by 120, all due respect folks, but some of these lots, the people bought these lots for the specific size. Like if this was in other areas downtown, there would be 2 homes on the same square footage. Like, and that's what we are almost proposing here, which is like, even though the bylaws are in place, this is very, like the nature of a bed and breakfast or a rental. This is rental of a complete home. Like there's new duplexes that are built for the same dollar value, even less square footage. And so I know the bylaws are in place, but this is something that almost could be, all due respect, reevaluated within our planning development, because it's not defined quite enough for somebody of this specific interest. I think it goes beyond the purpose, is what I think we could look into in the future. So
Thank you, Member Ross. Any further discussion? Yes,
Yeah,
Member
through the chair.
Kennedy.
We do have to keep in mind, there also is already a suite in that neighborhood. So this is not the first of its kind. So somewhere along the line, there was a suite built in the neighborhood.
Yes. The Belmont officer Dooley.
Through the chair to Member Contenti, the one that's pictured on this slide here does show, so that's on Coventry Lane, but it backs onto where it's quite visible on, I believe it's 63rd Avenue. And then Development Officer Kirk here really helped me out, and we went through and did, just for MPC's consideration, these are some of the previous approvals, some through MPC, of 2-story or similar size developments throughout the city. It's not specific to this area, but an overall kind of bird's eye view.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any further discussion from anyone? Okay, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Oh,
Would you like to read the motion back, maybe?
yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
If Senior Officer Dooley
Sure.
would read the motion back.
So as Councillor Ross so moved, that MPC refused the application for the following reasons. The proposed development unduly interferes with the amenity of the neighborhood and enjoyment of adjacent parcels. The proposed development is an overdevelopment of the site, and the proposed development is uncharacteristic of the neighborhood.
Thank you for that. So the proper procedure here would be opposed. It would be approving that in support of that. Okay. Yes,
Correct.
that's what we're doing. Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I just make sure it's right, right? So of the refusal. Yes, that's what I was thinking. So good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So yes. All right. So we're okay to say approved here. So all of those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay, now Manager Hackett, please give us direction.
Chair Gullickson, a tie vote is a lost vote,
Yes.
which means that the decision is not refused yet. It is the refusal was lost, and so if MPC would like to put another motion on the floor, or if there's further discussion, you can put this motion on the floor again for a second consideration.
Thank you very much. So does everyone understand that? Okay. Anyone wish to make that motion at this time?
No, I'd just like to add that I think the one existing one is, to me, it's like, that's a bachelor suite. That's not a full-fledged family. Like in that one over above the garage, that's not a 3-bedroom full, like this is 2,200 square feet is what we're proposing. This one over top of the garage to me, it looks like a bachelor's student rental bachelor suite. So I think that that's not a fair comparison in my opinion. So.
Mhm. So did you want to make the other motion, Member Ross? Okay, well, you won't make that motion, okay. Anyone else wish to make that motion then? Because I will, then you, oh, yeah, that's that's the point, right?
Somebody changes their mind. It can be developed, so we can- right?
See, nothing's happened right at the moment, correct? Yeah. So as far as this, the motion goes, we need to make the motion in the positive now? Right. Okay,
Well, for
Member
the
Rudd?
purpose of
yes,
moving forward,
Yes.
I've obviously made my stance, but I guess under A, you approve the application subject to the conditions listed. And I'm just gonna, obviously, there is 11 conditions. I don't think we need to repeat them.
No.
And this motion is a positive motion, then you defeat this one, correct?
I believe that's the process.
Thank you.
And there was the one additional condition for the lot grading, correct? Okay. And that's okay with your motion, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. All right. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of this motion? And opposed? There you go. So now that, no, well, now that is defeated, correct?
Yes, Councillor, Chair Gullickson, that motion for approval is also defeated because of a tie vote.
Yeah.
Perhaps there might be additional information that the commission would like that would, or changes to the conditions, if it's size or if there's particular design elements that a commission member would like to
Well-
suggest that would cause them to change their vote.
So in this case here, I would think going back to the developer, possibly is there some changes that could be made that would make this work? Currently, we're at a stalemate, as you saw, and the reasoning behind it is very understandable because it is a large development for that property. There's no doubt. So I think we're in a position where can we defer this back now to another? member
So
or-
to the chair, so at this
Thank you.
point, the application as it stands has been, like the approval's been defeated. So if you wanted to see substantial changes, administration could work with the applicant, but a brand new application would have to come forward.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And it'd have to be substantially different because there is a bit of timelines in the land use bylaw that prevents someone from reapplying for a use within a certain time frame if it's the same use.
Mhm.
So it prevents people from having to come back over and over and over again.
Right. And there's rules for that, and that's the reason. So it can't happen right away again. I understand that. Thank you. So I guess that's where we're at. To work with planning and see if you can make some changes to make that work. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a tie and it's defeated. So unfortunately, that's where we're at. And a number of people in the room are happy and some are sad, and that's the way it goes here. And normally we say that's approved, but we're not able to do that tonight or defeated. Both of them are kind of up in the air. So hopefully you can maybe make some changes that would work for your neighbors. I don't know if that's possible or not. But if you work with our planning department, maybe we could come back with something that would work a little bit better and fit in. Yes, Development Officer.
Just to the commission and the room as a whole, just to clarify as well, even though the application is refused this evening, it is still subject to the 21-day appeal period, which should someone choose to appeal the refusal, then it would go to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board.
Oh,
So just as
okay.
an FYI, if someone chooses to appeal the refusal, there would be a second meeting with a different board to discuss that appeal.
So I have a question. Considering we had two motions, can they both be appealed?
To the chair. So no, it's not the motions that are being appealed. It's the actual decision of the commission.
Which is it's
which is-
refused.
Three with those three
Yeah,
bullet
okay.
points there.
Okay, thank you very much. That's clear. All right, thank you very much, everyone,
I
for
have a
coming.
question.
Or
process. If I may,
Um,
it was brought up as conditions that could be brought forward, correct?
there,
You could
There
add
were-
conditions
no,
upon
we're
moving
done.
forward. No, but I thought Manager Hackett, you said conditions could be brought forward for discussion of adding conditions.
Suggestions to the applicant for changes which Chair Gullickson has
Right.
suggested.
Right.
So if
And
there was specifics,
what I think that was addressed with them
Yeah.
working with
Okay.
planning,
yes.
under this to make those changes. To meet, I'm sure they're well aware of what their neighbors think and would be willing to accept. And I would hope that they would come back with a different plan. Potentially, I don't think it's up to us to make those decisions for you. Okay. So we will move on. And that's the end of our permits or applications that we have to address. Oops, I'm on the wrong one here. This one, there we go. And now we need a summary of permits issued by development officers and the Development Authority.
All right, I'll take you
You are
through
on the agenda. I don't know. You said you weren't.
that. Thank you.
Development Officer Kirk.
All right, thank you, Chair Gullickson. So the first one was a billboard sign located at Northeast 64126 west of the 4th Meridian. It was discretionary use, so the permits can be approved by the development officer if no opposition is received. None was received, so that permit was issued on October 3rd. And the other one was a secondary suite at 40 Country Ridge Close. Again, that was a discretionary use permit where we didn't receive opposition, so it was issued on October 7th. And that concludes the permits issued by the development officer.
Thank you
Development
very
Authority.
much for that. I appreciate that. Then next on our agenda is our next meeting, which is November 6th. Is there permits?
There is
Really?
indeed at
What's
least one
going on?
application.
What is going
I don't know.
on? So November 6th is our next meeting. And that is it. I would look, member Kent's.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, we're adjourned.